industry news, machine reviews, interviews, and a lot more right here on the Weld Like That podcast.
This conversation was recorded between myself and my dear friend Sheldon Brear. We only start to touch the surface on Sheldon's career within the welding industry, and I can guarantee Shelley will be back to continue with the conversation. Some controversial questions are asked about walking the cup this week, and we take a deep look into how it started for Shelley. Before we press play, I want to thank each and every one of you for listening and supporting the show. Without you, it just wouldn't happen. So here we go, episode 004, Sheldon Brear. Word of warning, this one has gold as standard.
Yeah, so, we had a bit of a laugh about it. And actually, I was telling him about this. I said, I'm doing a podcast, but I said, oh, what's the company? I said, MS Welding. So for the last few years, he's worked at Dewsbury Hospital in the maintenance department. All right, okay. And on the welding side of things, I said, yeah. I said, in fact, this company, it's MS Welding. When I first called on them, what really took me aback was when I went into the workshop, there was 2 refurbished Miller Synchrowaves.
So when would that have been? When did you...
That was when I was with Welding Star.
So how many years ago was that?
So that's going to be... When did I start with Welding Star? 1998.
So my certificate of apprenticeship, I don't know what dates are now.
Mm-hmm.
I think, let me just have a quick look here. 1996, my apprenticeship started.
Right.
So you came in 1998.
Yes.
What were you doing at Welding Star at that time?
I went as national account manager.
Right.
I was looking after Snap-on, Tools, BOC, Partco, Brown Brothers. It was a good job. It was a really good job.
Because Snap-on used to take the Cibora mix and brand them as Snap-on, didn't they?
I can't remember what happened, but at that time, Tony Booth used to look after you.
Yeah, Tony.
And because I lived across this part of the Pennines...
In Ponty,
if there's anything coming to you, he'd say, do us a favour, can you drop this off in it to MS? So that's how that's my first sort of
So did you not know my dad before then?
Not really, no. I'd heard of him. I'd heard of him with AA Welding when I was at Frankie Myers.
So that's... How did you become a welder? Like from leaving school and pulling trigger? Let's start there. How did all that begin?
Right. Well, actually, my apprenticeship, I left school.
Yep.
1977, and I started my apprenticeship at a company in Castleford, a chemical company, Hickson and Welsh.
That used to be just at that little lane.
It's Weldon Road, right opposite the Castleford Rugby League ground.
Yeah, that's
directly
right.
Opposite.
Yeah.
And I started my apprenticeship as a technician, not a welder.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did the usual full year at college, and then we went back to work and did a day release and 2 night schools.
Okay.
And depending on your academic capabilities, so it was deemed that I was set on the ONC and then to do the HNC.
Right.
In process engineering.
Right, okay.
Because the course was tailored to what we did at Hickson's. So from an engineering fitting type of education and apprenticeship, the apprenticeship was tailored to it really. So we did the usual thing. So our first year was EITB, where you made your own tools.
Yeah, so that's my dad's EITB Engineering Standards Award there above you.
Same thing. And then you did on the machining, the lathes, the milling machines, all this kind of thing.
Which is exactly what my dad did, because it was 70s, wasn't it? And it was really pushed.
But what was great about it, what was also included in that kind of curriculum was pneumatics. So we did a unit on pneumatics where you understood how compressed air works.
Was that specific to the course that you were on because of the company that you came from?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So, for example, you imagine a chemical company.
Yeah.
And the pipe work and the processing and all the pipe, the valves and actuators and everything that was involved in operating valves on automatically from a board and everything else.
Yeah.
We needed to understand that as well. So,
Okay.
so you were sort of given exercises of you'd have 2 pistons and you had compressed air coming in, but you need to also operate another piston before that one. Well, what kind of actuators would you put in there and there? And you had to build it,
Yes.
But first of all, you had to draw it. You had to do a schematic of how it was going to work.
So you did some time in the drawing office as well, yeah.
And then we did a little bit of electrical work, a little bit on electronics. Nothing major, it was just basic.
Okay.
So you knew the basics of electrics.
What a relay does, what a solenoid does. Yeah.
And then when we started, so that was the first year. Then when you finished college on that first year, went back to Hickson's. You were allocated to whatever team you were. At that time, there was 30 apprentices. There was different teams.
Right.
I was allocated to the construction team. So that was a team you went with. You got put with a guy. You were his apprentice. I was put with a guy called Jed Hardcastle.
Nice name.
He became my dad. He became my second dad.
Working dad, yeah.
But then what happened was then you were allocated to different teams. So that was your team you came back to.
Okay.
But during the years you had a 3-month secondment in the drawing office. You had a 3-month secondment in the electricians. We also used to have a control department because at that time we had a control department that dealt with all the pneumatics.
Right.
And we had the electricians department that did all the electrical side.
Yeah.
Them departments eventually merged into one because they worked on the similar sort of basis, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
But at the time they were separate. And so you got from an engineering point of view, I got a real rounded out sort of education and training on quite a lot of engineering aspects. You could be in one team, you would be pipe fitting, so it was pipe fitting, bending pipes, measuring, and everything else. Yeah, so that's how the apprenticeship worked. Then you went back to work in your different teams, but in the meantime, you had a day release.
Right, and you just go back to college, would you, for that one day?
Yeah, for that. But also you did 2 night schools. So that on the day release, that it used to be Tuesday, Thursday. So Tuesdays was all day at college, and then the night school. And then I'd go back on Thursday to another night school.
Mine was all day Monday and Monday night.
Yeah.
And I remember my initial college was down on Dewsbury Road, which is now Harrison Spinks. And how my dad got me on that course was he phoned up the college and managed to speak to a guy called Chris Lawton, who helped write the course that my dad went on in the 70s.
Right.
And my dad said, there's no courses for our bars. All these courses don't. And he said, I've put a course together for Vickers Tank Factory for their apprentices.
Ah, brilliant.
He says, but there's a bit of a clause in this, Mal. And he went, right, go on. And my typical that you'll get this the minute I say it. And my dad said, go on, what is it? And he said, this course for the people at Vickers, they're here 4 days a week. My dad said, I can't allow him to be there 4 days a week. So Chris and my dad decided that I'd do the same amount of work as the guys from Vickers by going in Monday and Monday night and Thursday night. Typical dad.
Yep. So, well, he wants value for money from you and everything else.
He got value. But that were really good because very similar situation to that. Because I think apprenticeships have kind of just been blanketed at that point. Yeah. So to get somebody who put a course together before Vickers had been moved from Leeds.
That was good. I mean, I was amazed how they tailored it because, I mean, we went to, the college I went to was Whitwood. It was a mining and technical college.
That's where me and my dad did our 16th edition together.
Yeah, so Whitwood Mining, because of the area and the mines and everything else, it was mainly sponsored by the mining industry.
Yes, because it's closed now, hasn't it?
Exactly, yes. But then all the local companies, such as us, like Hickson and Welsh, there used to be Joseph Rhodes Engineering. There was Greg's Glassworks, which had a full maintenance team and crew, all their apprentices.
Glassworks is still big, isn't it, in Castleford, Normanton?
Cameron's in Leeds, all their apprentices went to Whitwood as well.
Which has gone now, hasn't it?
Yes, yeah. The guy who was my best man at my wedding, in fact, my best mate all through, since I was 5 years old, he was apprentice at Cameron's.
Right, okay, who was that?
A guy called David Stogden. He worked on the machining side of things.
Okay.
But yeah, so I knew. So it was small world, because turn the clock forward years and years later when I'm with Frank Myers.
Right.
And there's a need to go into. Then I ended up at Metrode, and there was a need to go into Cameron's for the first time. And the guys at Frank Myers are saying, "Hey, be careful what you say. Cameron's is our big customer. It's the biggest. It's our biggest customer. You be careful. You just follow our lead. You know, you." As I thought, okay, not a problem. So you went into the workshop. Is, "Hey, Shelley, can't see you for years. Hey, Grez, you all right, mate? Bloody hell, you know." And then the welding supervisor was Ken Hardy, who I knew from Whitwood Tech. Bloody hell, what are you doing here, sort of thing? And let's get kettle on and all this sort of thing. And of course, the guys from Myers were like, "What's happening here?" You know. And
so how did he get to that point from Myers, from Hickson and Welsh?
So right, we digress. So I was at Hickson and Welsh, did an engineering apprenticeship, got my HNC, and then as I was finishing my 4-year apprenticeship in engineering, that was at the time, it was the sort of early 80s, and the country was in recession.
So that was under Thatcher rule, was it, at that point? Under the Thatcher rule,
and we were actually on a 3-day week. It was very similar to when we had COVID and we had furlough. It was a similar sort of, I can't remember exactly how it worked, but the guys used to call them Maggie days.
3 days a week. Was this due to the fact that the coal miners had gone on strike at this point?
It was before then. It was before then. You're talking around 1981, 81.
Right, so I was 2 years old.
And so the guys worked 3 days, and the other 2 were partly paid by the government.
Wow! And why was that though? Why?
And the guys
just due to the recession.
The guys called them Maggie days.
Right.
And the guys loved it. You know. So based on that, we were coming out of our apprenticeship, and the company said, "Sorry guys, we're sorry to tell you, but there's no jobs for you. We're going to have to lay you off." Okay, so, and then sort of all of a sudden they came back to us and said, from the fitting side, they said, "Look, there's 4 jobs available for fitter welders."
Right.
Because as well as having the central workshops where the welding was most of the welding was undertaken, and if you needed a welder on site, there was 3 satellite fitting shops plus the construction team that I worked in.
Yes.
So if you needed a welder, you used to call on the workshops, and they'd send a welder out to you as and when you needed one to weld a pipe or weld a bracket onto somewhere or do some steelwork welding or whatever, you know?
Yes.
So what we want to do is we want to put a welder in each of those satellite teams, but for you to do a dual job, be a fitter and a welder.
Okay.
So them jobs are available. So you're going to have to, apply for it, and you'll have to do a weld test and all this sort of thing. Luckily, our apprenticeship involved a certain amount of welding, but nothing as in-depth as what the real welders did, you know.
So it was a broad-based, engineering-based apprenticeship?
Yes, it was. It was, absolutely. And now I just got, at 21, because that's what you did back then, you got married.
Yeah.
So I just got married with a mortgage. I thought, well, my aspirations of being an engineer, because that was the plan was to go, upstairs and be an engineer, a process engineer, So, as part of our curriculum was things like used to calculate fluid dynamics. So, for example, if you've got a tank that's so many meters diameter and high,
Yep.
Then what's the volume? So to move that volume, and by the way, the fluid is of a certain viscosity.
Yep.
Then what size pipe do you need, and what pressures do you need
What pump do you need to use
to put that fluid into another tank? So many
100 meters away. Yeah.
And you'd got, and don't ask me to do it now, but using a combination of calculus and formulas. I always remember Bernoulli's theorem. That was one that always sticks in my head. And then, of course, you had to sort of take into account if you needed to increase pressures along the way. You'd use orifice plates.
Yeah.
So, what diameter orifice would you need for? So you did all that kind of thing. So that was the kind of maths, and
that's where you wanted to be,
and that's where I aspired to.
Brilliant.
But it wasn't to be, and I'm thinking, well, I've got a mortgage to pay now. I need a job, you know. So I applied for one of the jobs, and based on my weld test and everything else, I got it. Along
Amazing.
with 3 of these other guys, including one of my really good mates who I saw him last night actually.
Band practice.
Band practice, yeah. He's the bass player. So he got the job in number 3 fitters. I got the job in the construction team. There's a job going in the central workshops. Another lad got that one. And then there was another one in development. So we got the jobs. Then as it turned out, once we got the jobs, what happened is they sent us to the Wakefield Skill Centre. So that's when the Skill Centre at Wakefield used to be at Chancery Bridge.
Right.
I don't know, if you go to Wakefield now,
yeah,
there's actually a set of
apartments on the right hand side.
That used to be the Skill Centre.
Right, I never knew that. I never knew that's where it used to be.
Yeah.
Being a Leeds lad my whole life.
Yeah. So, and so we did that. So it was a very, very compressed course. It was a good course, though. It was good to get you, on the welding. It was mainly stick welding, TIG welding. We didn't do any MIG at Hickson's. It was all stick and TIG. And then we were sent back. Then you were put into the workshops with the real welders.
Right. Okay.
And they didn't allow you to go on site to your allocated fitting team until they felt you were competent enough to do so.
Right. Okay.
So
you didn't think about watching a few YouTube videos and going straight out to the job then?
No, strangely enough, we didn't have that. We had to do it the hard way. We had to actually do it.
and you was taught in the ways we're gonna make you use MMA, because that, I think, in a lot of cases that's a lost art now.
Well, the thing is, but once we got into it, I mean, what happened was all of a sudden the economy picked up.
Yeah, so that'd have been about 1984, 1985 when we started to really come out as a boom.
It picked up sort of 82-ish, 83. And what had happened during the recession when Hickson's did make people redundant, they made too many welders in the workshops redundant.
Right, so they were
the
man down.
Yeah, and some of the guys who did the 100% X-ray work on the TIG work and everything else, because some of the products we used to handle, such as phosgene gas, chlorine in its raw state,
which is incredibly dangerous.
So all that pipe work was 100% X-ray.
I can understand that need.
So when they realised that, hey, we let too many welders go, and not being, not blowing my own trumpet, but of the guys that they were training up for these jobs in the satellite fitting teams, I was the one that sort of shone on the welding side of things.
Right. So that's how the real welding journey began for you.
So Dennis Rutherford, who was my foreman, who is one of the best welders I've ever seen in my life, gas welding.
Amazing.
Watching him gas weld a pipe, butt weld a pipe with gas welding was...
It's a lost art.
Inspirational. Honestly.
It's part of a lost civilization,
honestly,
unfortunately, that just doesn't exist anymore.
It was fantastic. It was just, I just love watching him, it was amazing. And he was a good teacher, to have a guy like that teaching you along with some other very, very good guys at Hickson's.
Because we still had an abundance of wealth.
I was blessed.
Wealth in knowledge.
Some really, really good guys. And so he approached me. He said, look, I know you were originally set on to go into the construction team. He said, but because of how you've taken to welding, you've obviously, and you've either, with welding, you've either got it or you've not, Yes. And he says, what we'd like to do is train you to advanced level, get you coded and everything else. And I'd like you to stay in the workshops.
Okay.
So
nice.
you can be part of our team and, so doing the real work, doing the,
yeah.
I said, yeah, great. I said, but what I had to do, and it's so weird. And at the time, my primary motive was earning money because
you
I
got
just
a
got
mortgage.
Married. I got a mortgage. I needed money,
Was your daughter on the way by then?
No, that was 13 years later.
Right, okay.
So it was just me and the missus, but we wanted holidays.
And the interest rates then were way higher than they are now.
You're looking about 13%.
And people are complaining now at 5.25.
I was paying a mortgage on 13%. And I like my cars, I was young. I like my cars.
What did you have? What were the car of choice at that point?
My car of choice at that time, I had I had a Capri.
Did you?
Capri.
What engine? 2.8?
No, it was a 1.6 GL. But then...
White or black?
It was like a metallic crimson colour.
Oh, that you see that? Yeah, that was a colour.
Tan interior with a black vinyl roof.
Black vinyl roof, classy.
Amazing car. And then I traded it for a Datsun 260Z 2+2.
Beautiful.
2.6 inline 6.
What colour was that?
It was white. And my dad, I remember lifting the bonnet, and my dad took a look at it and says, that is an exact replica of the engine of the Triumph Vitesse, apparently.
Okay.
Twin carbs. What a monster of a car, So that was me, that was.
Oh, brilliant.
So all that took money, But yeah, so that was, and of course I was playing in the bands, guitars, I had to get
guitars are expensive,
guitars and Marshalls and everything else. So they cost money, and yes, so I took. So that's how it happened. So I got trained up, got my tickets, got my coding and everything else.
And how long did you stay there?
And I stayed there until 1988.
Right, so 1988. The reason why this is quite a golden era for me is when I used to remember you came to Dad's funeral, so you heard Rick Astley. So it's around that time of that story that I told the other week. But Dad used to sit down and watch a program on the TV of that era on ITV called Enterprise. Do you remember it? And they did Enterprise 87 and they did Enterprise 88. And I think it was done on ITV. And what they used to do is go around small enterprises. So I think one year a model railway won it somewhere in Yorkshire. And my dad used to watch it and he used to take so much business acumen from it. And he'd analyse it. Why have they won the enterprise of the year? Yeah. And I just wondered if you'd ever seen it.
I never seen it. I don't recall it. No, I don't recall that program.
It was something that sticks in my head from that period of time with the disco lights that he built and the Rick Astley to Enterprise 87 and Enterprise 88.
Well, set him up. He obviously took inspiration from that then and some of the...
Yeah, because I don't think my dad ever...
lessons.
My dad never kind of... If Trevor at AA Welding hadn't of gone down the manufacturing route, Dad would have still been there. Dad would have never set MS Welding up.
Yeah.
And the only reason Dad left was purely because Trevor really wanted to go down the route of manufacture. My dad said, do you think as a company you've got the knowledge to build machines to compete with everything else that's out there? And at that time you're thinking about ESAB, LAH, 500s, Millisinker waves, dial arcs, and all that stuff that were absolutely bomb-proof as machines. What are you going to build in the UK to compete with that? And my dad was like, why don't we just continue refurbing equipment, will be one of the biggest if we carry on. And Trevor didn't want to do that. And Trevor offered my dad like a partnership, like shares in another business. And my dad just took some financial advice, and the accountant went, "You're going to be liable for an awful lot here, and you don't have the belief in the manufacture side of the business. If you're that capable, why don't you put this bet on yourself?
Yeah,
go your own way." And that's what my dad did. There were no hard feelings. My dad. I'm sure that my dad sat with Trevor now. I really am. I'm sure they sat together drinking tea and chatting.
Yeah.
So where did you go from there? Because obviously and I see this, we spoke about today about somebody you've been to see, and so many people leave the trigger and go into the sales side.
Well, what happened with me was, so during my years of welding at Hickson's, and 95% of the welding I did was TIG, because when you look at the materials that again, from a welding perspective, from an engineering perspective, it was a great apprenticeship because you learned so many different aspects of engineering. From a welding point of view, there were so many materials we used to weld because of the different chemicals, the different media that the pipes used to carry. So anything from, normal mild steel, stainless 316, 308s, Inconels, Hastelloys.
When you were doing your 316, did you used to walk a cup?
It was a weave and a wiggle.
A weave and a wiggle.
A weave and a wiggle. We've talked about this walking the cup, we
have.
I watch some of the current YouTube, footage, some of the Instagram footage, influencers and everything else, and I see it seems to become like a buzzword or buzz saying, "Hey, we're walking the cup."
I agree. It's a buzzword, and
and they'll show you and everything else, and it's great. And
it's very artistic.
And me and Martin, I told you my welder friend, the bass player in the band, because we rehearsed last night, and I'll tell him what I was doing today.
Brilliant.
And we were on about the walking the cup, and he said, "Well, Shelley," he said, "You've got a short memory." I said, "What do you mean short memory?" Well, when we were welding together, can you remember? He said, "You used to walk the cup." I did. But we didn't used to call it walking the cup. It was called... It was
like a weave, wasn't it?
Yeah, we called it a weave and a wiggle.
Right.
I said, we used to do exactly the same. I said,
what applications would you have used it in?
But the thing is, not to the... We did, but the weave pattern wasn't as exaggerated as what you see
on Instagram and
YouTube and everything else. Because and people listening to this, and I'm very open to, if someone can tell me different,
me too.
Please let me know.
Well, they'll be able to put it in the comments of this podcast, and I'd love people to do that.
Yeah.
If you're listening on Spotify to this podcast, I'd love you to pop in the comment section, which you can do, and actually put your opinions in.
Yeah.
Keep it clean and be open-minded about it. I don't want it to get into a bitch fight, but please, I'd love to hear people's opinions.
I'm open-minded. If someone can tell me, great. I'll take it on board. I'm you never stop learning in this industry, But from how I was taught and the environment I worked in, because when I left Hickson's, I went to Senior Greens in Wakefield. So I was there.
What did you do at Seniors? What kind of work was that? That was TIG,
wasn't it? It was mainly on the economizers. One of the reasons I went to Greens was because I wanted to get more experience on MIG, because we didn't do MIG at Hickson's.
Because it all had to be so clean.
Yeah, so the application wasn't there.
Okay.
So I had an opportunity to, learn MIG, work with flux cord wires on the heavier engineering.
Nice.
And but
so what machines were you using there on the MIGs? What were you using?
It was ESABs. The ESABs.
LEH 500, thyristor-controlled machines.
Yeah. There's some Kempis there, some old Kempis.
Well, some of the old Kempy stuff like the RA,
They were all right. I mean,
I know the switches weren't over reliable, but the transformers were pretty bomb-proof on those. We've rewound a few in Asday.
I mean, greens, they took some stick, But the thing is, because of my TIG welding, I ended up on the economizers.
TIG welding again.
So
Synchrowave, Miller Synchrowaves.
No, they weren't. They were. I tell you, they were the new arc, the new arc
power source,
and the range
HF unit.
HF unit. Is it the range? Was it the Ranger? I forgot what it's called now. The HF unit. That's.
I was looking at some schematics for it this morning, but I can't remember.
Just used to hire them from MS Hire. Was it MS Hire from MH? Is it MS8? No, just down the road.
Just around the corner.
Lane.
Yeah. We used to do all their repairs.
Because Alan Clark.
Yeah, Alan Clark. Have you heard that story about first time he walked in here and saw my dad? Yeah. And my dad went...
By the way, for those who don't know, Alan Clark, Leeds United legend, sniffer. Right, carry on.
He walked in here and my dad had his red overalls on and he went, Malcolm Steele, because my dad was a goalkeeper. And down at Elland Road. My dad was going to be a goalkeeper, but my grandma looking after the 7 kids. Granddad worked in a mill. My granddad was a ridiculously good mill engineer. Like people talk about me being a bit crazy working through night.
Yeah.
I get that off my dad, and my dad gets it off him, where they go and they would physically bed in a pair of bearings for the drive shaft on the main drive for the mill when the bearings had collapsed on a night, and my granddad would take my dad in. Yeah. And it'd get them so they were a mirror finish on the inside of the bearings. Yeah. And my dad and he'd say, right, okay, Malcolm, we're ready. And then my dad said, part about it was when he put a cross straight through the middle at bearing. So he made it perfect. And my dad would be like, what are you doing that for? I said, it's so oil's got somewhere to go. Otherwise they would dry up. And my dad would be like, we've spent all night doing these bearings by hand with all the different files and everything, really making them fit. Yeah. And then you just put chisels straight through it. And so my granddad works all night, my dad works all night, and hence I think it's in my DNA that when it comes. And it was funny because my dad were like, I think the person who really supported me, my dad, was his granddad. So my granddad was busy working in the mill. So my granddad used to go and support my dad down at Elland Road. And my dad took we've found his papers at home. Right. And he'd already signed up for his indentured apprenticeship as my dad.
Right.
And he signed up at the last minute because he didn't think the papers were coming for Elland Road to say he got a footballing apprenticeship.
Right.
So he'd signed on to, I spoke about it today. It's gone. But he signed up for his apprenticeship. So my dad knew Alan Clark. Yeah. And then when he came in here to see me dad about something, because he works for them, he was dropping something off that we used to do all their board repairs for them. Yeah. And he went, what are you doing wearing red overalls? Because obviously red's associated with Man U. Yeah. And they hit it off. And I'm like a little bit oblivious because I'm like, I'm not really into football. And he was like, that's Alan Clark. Clark used to come all the time then and have a bit of bitching with my dad. Quality.
But he used to, he used to come in, obviously we were his client.
Yes.
And but getting back to the point of walking the cup. Anyway, so the techniques I see, the amount of filler wire that they put into the weld pool in order to weave like they do and to get the weave profile, the finished profile, it looks amazing. I've got to say, I think it looks amazing. But the technique that I see being used, for me, it's near enough to what we would call blocking.
Yeah.
So for me, so there's too much filler wire going in order to be able to make that kind of profile. Mm-hmm. And I want to know, that surely can't be in accordance with the weld procedure.
Well, my issue...
Because... And the reason I say that, because I use greens as an example, because there was we were on nights, and the inspection team and management suspected one particular welder doing this blocking. You know, so you got the, you know, you imagine the boiler tubes. You got the elbows like the U pieces at the end, and you welded these U pieces onto.
Comes out of the faceplate and goes back in.
So you had to, you know, you butt welded these.
Yeah.
You had so many on a night shift to do.
Yes.
And what he used to do, he used to rattle his off well before us, and he'd get his head down.
Right.
And we used to think, how the hell does he do that? Now, someone must have said something, because someone came in, an inspector came in on the night shift and caught him blocking. So what, instead of doing a, say,
stringer weld.
So because it was like a root run, a fill and a cap.
And in that position, it'd have been G5.
You know, so it was G5.
5G.
All 5G. But what he was doing is he was putting his root run, then putting one big run in for
just
his...
filling it up and capping it all in one.
Yes. So from a metallurgical point of view, that's a disaster.
And I just want to kind of just go into that a little bit more. And it's a disaster for more than one reason. Trapped gases.
Mm-hmm.
Now, although these guys think that they're filling it up quicker, they're actually staying in one area of the pipe for a lot longer.
Yes.
So the heat of that material, whatever it is, gets hotter. So the heat affected zone becomes greater.
Yeah.
And I know that some of the guys on YouTube get a really narrow heat affected zone, but when you look at what they're doing it purely for show.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So they've got a big piece of aluminium or a big piece of copper at the back of it, which is great. But you can't use that when you've got some stainless pipes.
But I see some of the, you know, I mean, I don't know if they're on a real job. I'm a bit sad, really, but some of the forums I look and watch and research and everything else, and you see these on a job, you know, on a pipe job, and don't get me wrong, the caps, you know, they look amazing. They look amazing, but I'd just like to know, is that in accordance with the weld procedure? I'd just like to know, because
did you see Mr. Mortimer at my dad's funeral? Do you know who Harry is?
No.
Harry Mortimer. So he was with a chap at my dad's funeral called Paul. Now Paul is, I've met Paul, and I think we almost fell out first time we met. And I was talking to him about new technology and new processes in the MIG-MAG process.
Yeah.
And why it was so important, and it needed to be looked at and not pushed to one side. That it wasn't a fallacy, it wasn't a joke. You know, like CMT and cold arc and all those things are there for a purpose. And it's down to the fact that we can really refine what goes on at the droplet now, and we couldn't before. When you've got, and let's take this back to the Capri. The size of the engine in that Capri and the length of the bonnet, it wasn't the greatest handling car, was it?
It wasn't. No, you had to have a bag of cement in the
back.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on now to the ESAB LEH 500.
Yeah.
Did you ever try picking one of them up?
No.
Well, it's a good job, because your bollocks would be on floor.
No.
They were absolutely loaded. The amount of iron and copper in those transformers took up 60% of the space in those cabinets of the power source.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about that in terms of reaction time, that's slow. So you've got thyristors, and you've got a circuit board which fire your thyristors. Okay, and fire it, and the more on time in theory, the more power you get out. All right, let's make it simple for people listening. But you've got this huge transformer generating the power in the first place, and basically you're gating it, right? So that's what's happening.
Yeah.
But if you think about, that's really old technology, and the amount of iron and the amount of copper, that's a sluggish reaction time in terms of electronics. And the choke effect and the hysteresis effect and what's going on magnetically in that. Well, you've seen it, haven't you? When you pull the trigger, the contactor comes in and all the iron filings stand up on end on the floor.
Yeah.
So that is created from the transformer, okay, and the cables around it. So the reactance time, you could never do an open root weld with an ESAB LEH 500 with 1mm wire because you didn't have the control over the voltage at like 16, 15, 17 volts. You didn't have that control and you didn't have the refinement of the wire feeder. Whereas now we're using IGBTs and discrete electronics, which fire so quickly and they've got reactance time is super quick.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I was thinking about this actually because sort of in anticipation of doing this and talking to you, you know, and I was sort of like reminiscing. And after we finished rehearsals last night, we went and had a pint, and me and Martin were just reminiscing when we were on the tool, you know, when we were on the tools, and when we both worked at Hickson's, and how it wasn't until you actually went out on site by yourself with no one else to talk to. When you're in the protection of the workshop with all your colleagues,
it's a little bit different
else,
that environment, isn't it?
But the first time I went out on site to weld on site with a diesel generator with a team of steel erectors, I was welding some steel work. You know, that's when you learn. And the equipment we had at Hickson and Welsh, the diesel generators we had were, I don't know if you remember them or have you ever come across them. We had one old BOC like Lister engine. I think it was a 2-cylinder job where you had to wind the handle.
Was that the Mighty Midget?
I don't know what it was.
Did it look like a circular bell with a box on the top?
No, it was like, so you get like this diesel engine with a transformer with a potentiometer on the front, which was your amps.
So I've never seen the BOC one.
That was it. And then there was another one we had, which was on like a big tractor chassis type thing.
Was that the Lincoln Bullet?
No, it wasn't a Lincoln. That was a Lister engine as well.
Right, okay.
No electric start, no remote controls.
Crank it over.
You had to crank it over. So you had to crank it over. So you were cranking like mad while your mate, and we used to take the piss out of each other because you just to flick the levers over to get the compression.
For decompressor, yeah.
And of course, the mate would stand there watching you.
Wind your ass off. Yeah.
So there was that. So then got that sorted. So I'm up on scaffolding on the steelwork.
100 metres of cable behind you.
And of course, the juice, the amperage, the juice is too high.
Yeah.
So you shout down to the guy down below, turn the juice down, mate. Turn it down. Yeah. So he turns it down. Whack.
Too much.
So then it's too low.
Yeah.
So then you're shouting to him again. Can you turn it back up? But it turns it back to what it was.
Yeah.
And you're having this constant. And then, of course, this team of fitters that were with you, they're saying, well, we never have this with Tony or Dave. Bloody hell, call yourself a welder. Are you sure you're a welder? And you know, oh God. And then I learned through, you know, that the next time I went on that kind of a job, I had different size electrodes. I had 2.5, 3.2s and 4s, or in the old day, 12s, 10s and 8s.
Yeah.
And so whatever the amperage ended up at, the juice ended up at, I used an electrode accordingly.
Match. Yeah. Rather than relying on your mate to be a remote control.
And now, you know, moving forward, you know, and we did get better in the end. We ended up getting gen sets with remote controls, and it was brilliant. But and same with the welding, the welding sets we had in the workshop. The old some of them were BOC oil cooled from the local shipyard. There used to be a shipyard in Nottingley.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
I think it was Harker's.
It was. Yeah,
they were retrieved from there.
Right.
We had a windy up. I can't remember what make it was.
Well, that shipyard in Nottingley. Do you remember my dad used to build those wire feeders?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So what did that shipyard become? It became something else, and they used to do like longboats and coal boats and stuff.
You know, I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
I can't remember. I remember it when it was Harker's.
Well, my dad used to send me there.
And, but the part of it they went out of business and they auctioned a load of machines off. And so Hickson's bought them. And then we had the Miller Syncrowave.
Yeah.
And we had an old BOC Transtig, which was as big as a wardrobe. Which was a stick and a TIG, but mainly we used it on TIG.
An immaculate machine, though. No control at bottom end. You started at 50 amps. None of this welding at 3 amps like you can now.
Oh, no. And, it was our welding foreman didn't believe in the foot pedal. Foot pedal? What one of them for?
Right.
So, it was all done on the trigger. We didn't have any potentiometers or...
No slope up on that BOC either. It only had slope down and gas and post-gas.
Exactly, so, you adapted. You had to learn to adapt. And
you had to learn to weld.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the guys at welding now with the new gears got it easy, because I don't think they have. I think there's a whole different level of things to learn.
But I think it's brilliant, though. I think it's brilliant. Another subject we'll probably talk about at some point in the future, I'm sure you'll talk about it with other guests, is, the lack of skills and the... it seems to be the welding industry isn't attracting the younger people.
Well, I really want to talk about it. So what I'll do is I'll firstly go to... I was talking about Harry at my dad's funeral.
Yeah.
He was sat with a chap called Paul. Paul's a welding engineer. He goes global on ships.
Yeah.
Would it be Encon or Exxon, like one of the big oil companies? I don't know. And he goes out to do a lot of stuff for them.
Yeah.
And he stands pretty much by the welder's side all day with his clipboard and his pen and his camera. That's what he does. Back to walking the cup, they're not allowed. You walk the cup, you put your stuff down, you get your kit bag, and you go. And that's now, but that's global. Yeah. And we always have a giggle about it, because he bought a FRONIUS Transsteel T200.
Right, yeah.
For doing stuff at home. He's built a big swimming pool in his house, but it's nuts. Yeah, and he wanted to come here and have some time with me, so he came and I spent a full afternoon with him. Lovely chap in some ways, and his welding knowledge is second to none, but it's to the book. So back to the walking the cup situation, it's like if I see anybody with walking the cup, they get given the grinder to grind it all out, then they pack the bags and they go home.
I mean, the thing is, one thing I want to make clear is I'm not knocking it. I mean,
I'm not knocking it either.
I think it looks brilliant. And
I think it probably serves an application.
And I can remember, when I come to think of it, using a very similar technique as my mate reminded me yesterday, but not to the extent you see it, And like you say, Barry, maybe it's for cosmetic appearance, for the purpose of a YouTube video.
It gets views, doesn't it? Yeah, and the difference is these guys are doing this for views and hits.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing the podcast for views and hits. I'm doing it because I think it was massively lacking from the industry. I want to talk about my dad an awful lot and keep him alive in it for as long as I possibly can until I get to go see him again. And that was the ultimate. That was a driving force behind it. But the amount of people that knew me dad, that my dad's helped out and that they've helped him out and stuff, and relationships that have gone on. And so this, I don't care if 10 people listen to this, or 10,000 people listen, but the guys on YouTube doing this want the hits. They want the views, because that's what's going to get them in people's eyes.
I get that.
And don't get me wrong, some of it does look beautiful. It's a work of art, but you wouldn't be able to apply that to an Inconel fusion top. Or anything like that.
If it's artistry and if it's cosmetic, it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Or if you can block something in, because it has got, it is under 0.5 bar, and there's no, and because so many people, I still go to Shell, and I don't know if you come across this, and I still go to people and I'll go, right, this is a machine, this is what we do, this is what we can do with it. What welding procedure are you working to? Oh, there's no welding procedures for these.
Yeah, I get that.
And I look and I don't say anything. And I kind of think, so this is going into a refrigeration centre. It's going to be all the pipe work for a refrigeration unit or some kind of pumping station. But you're not working to a welding procedure. I don't say anything, but I struggle to understand how they get away with that.
Yeah, you do get it. I've come
so you
across
see it too.
Yes.
Not just me then, and my clientele.
No. It's. But yeah, so that's. I mean, I think we need about 2 weeks to talk about my.
You'll have to come back on in a month. You'll have to come back in a month.
I've been about a bit, as probably people know.
So you met us in '98. You were working at Wilkie's.
Yeah.
Good old John Wilkinson, who started out as an engineer as well.
Yes, he did.
You know, and my dad had so much positive to say about
you know
John.
something? That guy, Dr. John Wilkinson, OBE.
Right.
Got to say that. What a guy. What a guy.
Top engineer, my dad said.
Yeah, yeah. And a top guy, really nice family. I enjoyed my time there, working there.
And how long were you there?
I was there 7.5 years. What was it? 98 to...
And you met us by dropping some off for Boothie.
Yeah, 7 years, yeah.
Good old Boothie, good old Tony Booth.
Yeah. But stories, you just mentioned your dad there, you know, and so, you know, I got to know your dad through there, and then I used to pop in for a coffee and a chat with yourself.
See what he'd been on, you know,
with. And we'd talk, because when he knew I was into the music and...
Yeah, because we did some guitars for you. We fixed some guitars.
Yes, you did. You fixed an Ibanez for me, which I had, and with the pickups and everything.
Yeah.
And
I remember him saying, "Just bring it in, I'll sort it for you."
And he did. And so we developed. I think, you know, from business, but we became friends. You know, we became friends.
I always class you as a proper friend, and I've met you through the welding industry, and if we manage to do business together through that, that's great. But ultimately, you're my mate, and you were my dad's friend. But
one of the, we're jumping ahead a few years now. But when I started with, so we're jumping forward to 2006.
Is that when you started?
That's when I started with Hypertherm.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started at Hypertherm.
So for people at home who's listening, what was your job at Hypertherm?
Started out as distributor sales manager in 2006, distributor sales manager for the north of UK and Ireland.
Big area.
So it was a big area, but I had some good distributors.
Okay.
I had some good distributors who...
Was this predominantly hand systems and consumables?
It was hand systems and consumables. That was my focus.
Right.
With distributors, because at Hypertherm, you had the distribution market. Then there was the OEM market for the mechanised systems. Yep. So you had the OEM sales managers who would. So in the UK, for example, you'd got Messer up in the northeast with the Messer. You'd got Esprit in the Midlands who manufacture tables and everything else. Yep. Then from Europe, you got Microstep and Zinza and all these sort of OEM manufacturers, integrators sort of thing, you know. And so, but my focus was the manual systems and the consumables. And at that time, we just started the team for the consumable team. So for consumables, it just starts to focus on retaining consumable business.
Yeah.
And any consumable business we had lost to try and get it back.
Okay.
So I was in Northern Ireland with our consumables manager at the time.
Yeah.
And we were retrofitting a torch onto a HT2000.
Right, okay.
I can't remember what the table was. So the idea of retrofitting a new torch was to get the consumable business back from American Torch Tip, because the client, so the end user was using aftermarket American Torch Tip consumables.
Okay.
So rather than going in like for like, hey, try our consumables, why don't you try this new torch? We'll retrofit the torch. It's got a new design of consumables, the very latest, and you'll see the difference.
Okay.
So that's what we did. So we retrofitted this torch. Now on this machine, it was a Bernie controller. 2.4,
2.5.
I can't remember but I can't
How
remember
big physically? Was it a biggish one?
Yeah, it was a big one. It was big.
All right,
okay. Big, yeah. And the machine locked. The controller locked. The machine just would not work with this new torch on. And the end user, is getting more agitated as we,
and it starts to look bad on you a little bit, doesn't it?
And I'm looking at this controller, the consumable manager's looking at, and we're both looking at each other thinking, so I'm ringing technical service in Rosendale.
Sure.
Dave Peake, not available. John Waldhagen, not available. The others at the time, I can't remember if Vincent was with us in the technical department at the time, but there was no one available.
Right.
Now I could remember this flash came into my head talking to your dad, and he once told me, "What I don't know about burner controllers ain't worth knowing. I know everything."
Right. Okay.
Don't talk to me about burner controllers because I know. So I thought, right. So I rang your dad.
From Ireland.
I'm working for Hypertherm.
And I don't think at this point we did that much with you as a company.
No, you didn't. No. And I said, Malcolm, I'm in a right pickle here. What's up? Explain the situation. Right. So tell me what you can see then. What can you see? So I told him exactly. Well, and I can't remember that. I said, well, the screen's saying this. Right. Now, what you want to do, you see the button on the right-hand side, and you want to press that. Now, no disrespect to your dad. Your dad was, and I say this in a nice way, if you asked your dad the time, he would tell you how the watch worked.
Yeah.
Right?
Explanation of everything.
And I'm thinking, I just want to get this machine working. But you'd say, now, the reason you're pressing that is because of this, and what it'll do that. So, what are you seeing now? Well, I'm saying, fair play, he walked me through everything, and each step he's explaining why it is. The machine started working.
Amazing.
And then he was showing me on the cut speed, you want to do this for, do you just do this? He had me optimizing it and everything else. And honestly, the cut quality we were getting out of that machine at the end of
which should have been probably an old knackered machine as well,
was amazing.
Brilliant.
And now, and we've talked about it since, and your dad didn't have to do that.
No.
He didn't have to, but we'd become mates. We'd become mates through the music and everything else, and calling and having a coffee and everything else. But for me, I'll never forget that. Never forget that. It's comical. We talked about it afterwards. I say, when I used to come in, say, remember when I saved your bacon in Northern Ireland? Don't you forget,
Yeah.
And that's just one of many, I'm sure it's many examples of
the amount of time Dad used to put into other engineers, competitors as well, like people who were competitively working against us, who would phone him up and he would give them that amount of time of day.
Yeah.
And he's helped people build service divisions. And there was one particular company which we had to kind of cut ties with, unfortunately, because they just forgot, I think, what Dad had actually done for them. And their engineer had phoned me Dad 5 or 7 times a day, every single day. I need to get to another job, Malcolm, so I haven't really got time to diagnose this, so where should I be looking? Is what it came to, because my dad was that proficient at helping him down the phone. And then they tried, and they're a fair few 100 miles away, and then they tried going direct into one of our customers. And at that point, my dad said, they're done. That's it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to lose my rag.
Yeah.
You're done. Don't phone again. And I remember every time that guy phoned after, my dad was just like, yeah, I'll phone you back. And I'll phone you back. And my dad pretty much built their service division.
Right.
By...
Yeah.
So, and it was Malcolm, I haven't got time to be spending loads of time on this machine. Where should I be looking? Is what it came to. And I used to sit back thinking, my dad don't give me that much time when I phone him, and I'm knee deep in shit in the middle of a field fixing something. And he helps so many people. And because I mentioned something the other day about pulling off site in the middle of the night. If you love what you do, it's not work.
Exactly.
This won't work to me, Dad.
Yeah.
This is what my dad did.
Yeah. It was his life.
Completely.
It was a way of life. It was a way of life to your dad. It wasn't work. It was his way of life.
And I think that's why the grief is so hard.
Mm. Yeah.
Because I feel really sorry for my mum, because my dad spent every day here. Yeah. In COVID, he locked himself away here so COVID couldn't get him.
Right.
We had a CNC profiler to build for somebody. And he became poorly towards the end of that build, and he'd already started another one and half finished that when he died. But through COVID, he pretty much came to work every day to hide away from COVID. But because of that, my dad had a client. I did all their welder training in London, but the client lived in Pontefract. Really old school engineer, solid bloke, spoke it how it was, Yorkshireman, and he bought into the Alpha Qs with us. But really solid bloke, and initially their business was valves, great big valves for power stations and stuff, and like really expensive £12,000 valves, even more expensive some of the big stuff. And he used to refurbish them. And because Peter was very similar to me dad, Peter locked himself away through COVID. And then Peter sadly died of the same situation that my granddad did, which was mesothelioma, which was caused by asbestosis.
Right, okay.
Caused by asbestos.
Yeah.
So that's how my dad's dad died, asbestos in the mill.
Yeah.
And that's how Peter died. So Peter's in hospital in COVID, getting his chemo, and one of the nurses is in tears. So Peter's like, I don't think Peter would have been much older than my dad. Big old bloke, lovely fella. And he's like, tell me what's wrong, love. Why are you crying? Why are you upset? She was like, we've got no PPE. We've got no visors. We don't really know what we're up against with COVID. I'm trying to look after people like you. I don't want you to... You just hang on, love. Let me see what I can do. So he says, am I okay to use my phone in hospital? Of course you are. So Peter phoned me dad, and Peter went, get me as many grinding screens as you can. So my dad went, why? He said, because these nurses don't have any. He said, so my dad had a massive belief in that he'd got his money out at National Health, for all his national insurance that he'd paid and the treatment and the care that my dad had got from them for years. He got far more than he could ever have wanted from them. Okay. And he was all about paying it back. I think between my dad and myself and Peter and all the contacts we had, we managed to get about 3,000 or 4,000 welding visors into the National Health.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, that year, the accountant questioned us and said, Malcolm, all these screens here, you bought them at this price and they've gone out, in some cases, less than what you bought them for. My dad turned around and said to the accountant, I don't care. If I can't do something for the National Health, then what can I do?
Wow. So he more or less did them at cost then, just to help them out?
Some of them were cost, some of them were cheaper.
Wow,
because he'd not taken into consideration shipping and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of them came flat pack, so all our time building them up so the nurses could just put them on. That's a story that not a lot of people know about with my dad. And the accountant sat there and said, Malcolm, how come you've not made product and profit on this? He went, it's not about profit. Wow. There were nurses looking after people.
That's the measure of the man, isn't it? Eh? That's the measure of the man.
You were like, there's people there that need help.
Yeah.
Peter's my mate who needs help.
Yeah.
And nurses there need help. I can help. And I'll be honest, a few people that we bought the visors off and we got them off the water in a couple of situations were like, oh, you should be killing this. And my dad were like, they're just about one thing. He said, and I'm not about that. So let them think whatever they want.
Well, we had the example of those in government who did make a lot of money,
on it.
Yes, but we won't get political.
No, let's not get political, Shelley.
No.
It's a World Like Bazza podcast.
Yes, exactly. But no, it's I mean, the hypotherm was a great experience.
And you were there for quite a while.
I was there 8 years.
Why did you leave?
Yeah, I worked my way out of a job, really.
It's such a good job for the company, nothing left to do.
Like one of them, really. So,
where did you go from?
I went from there. Well,
was it Kempi for a short period?
No, I was at Kempi before then.
The Weld Like Bazza podcast is sponsored by MS Welding, the #1 welding solution provider. mswelding.co.uk.
As you know by now, something I really like to do on the show is the payback. This week's payback goes out to the team at SWP. The company have recently really impressed myself with the way they are moving forward. Dedicated product specialists mean I am only a phone call away for the information I may need if I need it. And my dedicated team look after my specific needs as a company. But recently, it's just like dealing with family. Gary Waterman was a great friend before he joined the team at SWP, but that friendship has grown into something extremely special, above and beyond what either of us could ever have imagined. Jeremy, Paul, Simon, and everybody else have become a company and a team of people I work with, not just a company I buy from. This week's payback goes out to SWP, Specialised Welding Products.
Word had got out that I was leaving Hypertherm, and Paul Rudd,
Lovely fella.
Welding Wilkinson Star,
Yeah.
knew me. Paul was at SWP at the time.
Yeah.
Paul got in touch with me and said, "Hey, I understand you're going to be on the market, sort of thing." I said, "Well, yeah,
Yeah.
Said, would be interested in coming working for us. I think SWP at the time didn't have the best reputation. And my knowledge of SWP wasn't very good. But I thought, hey, you know what? I'll talk to you.
I'll give it a go for a while.
See what you're going to say. So Paul spoke to me. I met Jeremy,
Yes.
who's a really nice guy.
Lovely
A
chap.
good guy. And I thought, I'll give it a go. So it was one of these where I left Hypertherm on Friday and I started with them on Monday.
Right, okay.
It was one of these sort of things. Now, no disrespect. I mean, I look at what SWP are doing now, and I'm really pleased for Jeremy that
Me
they're
too.
doing as well as they are.
I'm doing a lot of work with them regarding just ideas.
Yeah.
Idea-based help.
Because when I was leaving the company, I mean, Jeremy, bless him, he really tried to persuade me to stay. And
I can understand why, Shelley. You're an amazing asset.
He says, take a couple of weeks off. He got this villa in Marbella or wherever. He says, look, have a couple of weeks in my villa. Just get your head right and all this sort of thing. But it was one of these where I think it was too soon. I think if I'm totally honest, if I'd have had 2 weeks off, my head would probably have been in a different place. But I'd gone straight from a corporate kind of working.
It's a different kind of company, isn't it?
To a wholesaler that was, you had to learn to be very flexible very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a bit of a shock to the system for me because I'd been used to working to processes and all this sort of thing. And not only that, the Hypertherm product was very expensive.
Very expensive, but the best.
But it was great to. That's what I was used to. Because,
you sell the product on what it is, yeah.
And the wholesale style of selling is different.
SWP was a different company back then, wasn't it?
I couldn't hack it. I could not hack it. It was after 6 weeks. I thought I can't hack this. In the meantime, an agency got in touch with me about a job at Bowler.
So you went to Bowler from there, did you?
And I had the interview with Bowler they were looking for a distributor development manager.
Okay.
So at that time, they were looking to strengthen their relationships and develop their distribution better.
Right.
So I'd had the interview and I got such a good feeling about the interview. But I hadn't had any confirmation or anything, but I thought, you know what, I can't do this anymore. So I put my notice in with SWP, not really knowing if I'd got a job or not, But thankfully, I got notification, right, you've got the job at Bowler, blah, blah, blah.
Fantastic.
I was there 15 months.
Right.
Thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Yes.
Enjoyed myself at Bowler. They're a good, strong company. Enjoyed it. I was getting somewhere with the distribution. I like to think I was anyway. Was setting the platform to try and, get some development going and everything else. But what I'd also been given another job. So as well as distribution development, it was decided that I was also look after the automotive sector.
Okay.
Because we were supplying aluminium wire into JLR, into Jaguar.
Right.
At
Okay.
Halewood.
Yep.
And they were having a few problems, feed problems.
So that was your job to go try and solve that.
So I went on the job to JLR, and feed problems they had were on FRONIUS machines.
Right.
And I met Brian Murphy. Who you
Brian
met.
is potentially one of my favourite people in the welding industry.
Yeah.
Just because of being Brian.
Yeah. Exactly. So Brian...
And you can tell him that when you see him.
I will. Brian said to me, we were on this job, we were looking, and he said, well, why do you come and work for us at FRONIUS? I said, well, I'd love to work at FRONIUS, but there's never any jobs at FRONIUS. He said, there is. Is there? He said, yeah, they're looking for a sales guy for the Northeast.
Right, okay.
Now, I knew months and months earlier that Nick Parker was doing the north of England for FRONIUS.
Yes.
I've known Nick a lot of years.
Do you want to know what Oliver calls Nick?
No.
So my son Oliver calls him Grandpa Nick. Don't tell
Nick,
him.
if you're listening. And
like when he leaves, he goes, Grandpa Nick. Come on, Grandpa Nick.
But so I rang. I said, "Hey Nick, is it right? There's the." He said, yeah. He says, well, what they're doing, this is the area I'm doing. They're splitting it, so I can concentrate more on the northwest. So they need someone on the northeast.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So I applied for it and got the job. Yeah. And the only reason I sort of I remember on the interview for FRONIUS, one of the people who was interviewing me, because it was so it was an area manager, So the guy says, "Well, you've been in business development for quite a long time. At Hypertherm, you were in a leadership position. He said, you're looking at the bowler, you're in a business development. You're going to come to FRONIUS as an area manager. Don't you see that as a backward step in your career?" I said, "No, I see it as a forward step because I'm joining the number one company for innovation in welding, in my opinion." Now, a lot of people question that, but that was my opinion. And I said, so for the chance to come and work for FRONIUS, no, I don't see it as a backward step.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
Got the job, and the rest is history. And
So did you become UK sales director?
I was UK sales director I joined in January 2016. In July 2016, the opportunity to become the director was there. It was a quick sort of transition. Thoroughly enjoyed that job. About 18 months ago, it was decided
to make a change.
And really, in hindsight, it needed a change because it is very tiring. That position.
I don't know how people can maintain the amount of, well, it's like my kind of hours, isn't it? You can't do them forever.
That level of responsibility and also
huge.
the expectations from FRONIUS International, eventually you do get tired. And
anybody would.
And it needed a fresh energy. James Anderson, who's doing the job now, is doing a brilliant job.
Cool. And you seem to have really kind of flourished again in yourself.
I'm enjoying
recently.
it. I'm back. I'm back to. I don't. It's great not having the responsibility anymore. It's being responsible for a team. It's and you wanting to do the right thing all the time.
Responsible for business though as well, aren't you?
And the business, it's hard, So I'm enjoying being back, getting into end users.
Brilliant.
Getting involved in welding again. I get involved in some of the strategic tasks. Because one thing I did say to James Anderson when he took over, I said, look, don't make the mistake I did and try and do everything yourself.
Okay.
If there's an opportunity for you to, delegate some of the responsibilities to others, I'm here. Some of the strategic stuff that needs doing that, you probably won't have the time to do because you've got other things to do. I'm quite happy to do it to help you,
Cool.
And that's what we do. And as a team, as a sales team now, and as a management team,
because you just had one of your best years in business, haven't you?
We've had a fantastic year. We've had last year was unbelievable. It was unbelievable, and
that's really good because there was an awful lot of the welding sector last year that I think did take a little bit of a downturn. I think the entire industry as a whole did, but I guess it depends what baskets your eggs are in.
It's a bit of, and in fairness, there's a legacy of because during COVID, so during the COVID period when a lot of companies were were furloughing the sales force and everything else, rightly or wrongly, and I'll still stand by the decision. I kept being asked, "Are you sure you don't want to furlough certain members of the sales team?" And I said, no, because the guys are still on the end of a phone. We're still in touch with some of our customers are still working. They're still handling inquiries, and they need help and support and whatever we can do on the phone. There were certain times where we needed to visit companies because, it was critical work and they needed help, and so we followed all the guidelines that needed, all the forms that needed signing, we complied with,
Because I think the government got that wrong too, didn't they? But let's not get political.
Yeah. And
that paid dividends, I guess, being open.
I know there was certain, it was questionable, my decision was questioned, but it paid off because when we started back, when companies opened up and when
the floodgates open, so to speak.
We were still all these inquiries were still warm. We were still in touch with in the industry. So the guys just carried on, and as you know, the kind of products we sell and the kind of concepts we sell and the solutions to a welding challenge that we present and we help with customers with, they're not sales that happen within a couple of weeks.
That's not a 2-minute job.
They're all projects. And these projects came to fulfillment, some of them the year before, some of them last year, and we had a fantastic year. We had a naively, just before Christmas, all of us, all the sales guys, we were tired. We needed that Christmas break, and I finished on the 13th of December. I'm thinking, thank goodness for that. Oof, new year, new start, nice and easy. How wrong could it have been? Because we've started back. I don't know where January's gone.
I completely agree with that. I just, it's gone in a flash of a pan. I need to discuss the figures with Mum, but it's been chaos. It's been absolutely chaos, and 2nd of February today, and I don't know how we've got here. It seems like January's been non-existent in time.
And from what I can gather, I talked to other companies and everything. There's a lot of companies seem to be busy, in the welding industry. There's a lot of
hype. I think a lot of people are hype. They've got a lot of hype at the minute.
So, but all I can say from our perspective, we're busy. We continue to develop a lot of there's a lot of demand, as you know, Barry, for automation, robotics and all this kind of thing. That's a lot of inquiries we get.
Because you're very good at that, though. Yeah. You've got an awesome backup over in Austria. Your automation division is second to none globally. Some of the things that you've done in the past, I think if people were to look, and I'd highly recommend, if anybody's at home listening, to go onto the FRONIUS websites. Not because I'm promoting, because I think they would be in awe of some of the bespoke automation projects that you've done.
We have, we're very active in that, and we in April this year, and then I think a few months after that, at our facility in Milton Keynes. You've been there, Barry. You've seen the welding workshop and the laboratory and everything else. We'll have 2 new robot installations. We've already got robot installations in there anyway.
You've got about 6, haven't you, at the
We've
moment?
got a FANUC, a Yaskawa, an ABB.
But they all comply to this robot's going to be in a huge cell environment, don't
But what
they?
we're doing, we're bringing our own cobot over, but that will be installed. That's got a FANUC cobot robot on it. And we're also going to have a robot cell with a light industrial FANUC on it.
Brilliant. And that's going to be like a modular setup, so you can buy it as a basic setup, I guess.
Yes.
And then you can add like a 7th axis, which would be a rotator, and that 7th axis can also be manipulated, and you can add a tail stock and things, and I guess it'll run straight direct into a TPS. Correct. Whatever.
TPSIs. And the thing is, on the robotic side of it, the developments are amazing. I had the pleasure of being in Austria. When did I go? November. I went on a course, a training course. But while I was there, the guy who looks after us on automation for the UK, Dominic, we got an automation job ready to come to a client in the UK.
Okay.
And I saw Dominic in the in the canteen, and because I was also there with my colleague Stuart Evans. Stuart Evans looks after the Midlands,
right?
And the automated system was for his customer,
right?
So we said, look, is there any chance we could, one of the lunch times, can you take us over to the facility, which was about 20-minute drive from the offices to the bespoke automation workshop we have. Can we have a look at it to see, to see what it's like? Yeah, sure. So we went there. So we saw it's an overlay system, pipe overlay for pipe tubes.
Yeah,
so overlaying with Inconel.
Yeah.
Twin heads and everything else. Super fast.
CMT?
It's, so it's TPSI, CMT, marvellous.
Is it CMT or CMT Extreme?
CMT.
You don't need to go extreme.
No. And looked at the business, but what really took my breath away was the amount of robot cells that were set up for clients. There was one for
bespoke robot cells.
Yes, So what they're doing, what the automation department have done, that they're trying to put it into like a modular setup. So there's a modular. There's the cell walls, for example.
Yeah.
Then you've got certain manipulators. You got certain robot tracks.
Yeah.
Whatever length you need.
Yeah.
Tail stocks, etc. So it's the same standard sort of components, but you can configure them
how the client
ways.
Needs it.
Exactly. So there was there's one setup in particular, which was for a client in Eastern Europe who manufacture rail bogies.
Okay.
Something that doesn't happen in the UK.
No, not anymore.
And the setup was amazing. And having seen things with me, Barry, I'm a bit old fashioned. I like to see things and touch, and you can see things in a brochure.
It's only a very small part of it, isn't it? Touching it means everything.
And seeing it and looking at the quality of the engineering and everything about it, I've got full confidence in
the automation stuff at FRONIUS. So I class myself as an engineer.
Yeah.
That's dedicated to the welding industry my whole life. When you look at automation stuff from FRONIUS, it's like looking at a Rolls Royce. Like that's how comparable it is. And that's just me saying, that's not me blowing smoke up your ass or FRONIUS's ass. I'm not here to do that. Yeah. It's when you look at some of there's a video on YouTube that I've never seen the machine in physically myself, but I'd love to. And they're doing stainless steel cylinders, and it loads it, rolls it, puts the ends on, welds them, drops them down, spits them out, gets another load, does it again. But I'm not saying that FRONIUS are the only company that can do that, because they're not. There's other people that can do it.
Absolutely.
But when the FRONIUS machine turns up from the automation division, it's like a bespoke Rolls Royce. It looks that quality, down to the paint, down to the control system, down to how everything's assembled, the nuts and bolts used. And when you look at how my dad and myself used to build stuff together, it was like, this. Look at how this, and it criticised FRONIUS' stuff, and they go, I like that. Not so keen on that, but I like that. But it was the same with Messer Griesheim. So he'd look at Messer's stuff, and he'd go, now if you look at all my dad's profile cutters, like Mike and Paul down at TechServe, did always laugh at my dad's builds. You know, it's overkill, it's way too big, it's way too heavy. But look at that build that my dad did in comparison to a Messer, and it's just like a Messer but in red and black. Yeah, because he built everything as an engineer. From the 80s, overkill, built to last forever. It's not going to let you down on my watch, and that's how we do things.
Messer Griesheim. I mean, I couldn't help thinking. I couldn't help because I listened to your podcast with Callum. His guest there, which I really enjoyed.
Cool kid is Callum. Awesome.
It's really, it was nice to. Sometimes, you can get sort of, how can I put it, sort of a little bit too focused in your own thinking,
Tunnel visioned.
I'm working for FRONIUS, and you become very FRONIUS.
FRONIUS is the only thing.
And it's the same, I'm sure anyone working for ESAB or whatever, they're the same. Yeah. So it was good to listen to another perspective. I enjoyed that.
And he's young.
I enjoyed that.
He's young. He's got a lot of fight in him. He's got a lot of confidence. I reckon in 10 years' time, I reckon he'll be maybe not on the service side, but maybe on the high side of running businesses. Callum will be one to watch. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I hope.
Sounds good. He sounds good. I've never met the guy, but he came across very well.
I think. And I'm punching for the kid, to be honest. Like, I'm waving his flag. I can see him in the next 10 years being very, very, very high up in the company at EWM.
But I couldn't help thinking back, going back to my illustrious career. When I came off the tools, my first sales job was with Frank Myers Welding Supplies.
Yeah, on the Coal Road, yeah.
Yes. And
one of Oliver's dojos is now just round the corner from where you used to be.
Yeah, yeah. And it was great, It was a baptism of fire coming straight from the tools into sales. It was, it was different.
My dad raved about Frank Myers again.
But what a guy. Again,
business etiquette.
What a guy,
Was it Megatronic stuff you did massively? And Messer Griesheim?
Yes, it was. So the Megatronic, back then you had sort of designated sort of exclusive areas. So Frank Myers' area for Megatronic was West Yorkshire.
Yeah.
Now I was employed to cover Humberside.
Okay.
So in Humberside, it was engineering and welding supplies, had the Megatronics. So I couldn't sell Megatronic into Humberside.
No.
I could sell thermal dynamics into Humberside, but Planet Welding, who became Saturn Welding, were also thermal dynamics.
Okay, right.
So, and it didn't take me long to find out that when I'd done a demo and took the time to do a demo, and then the guy from Saturn would go in and just give him an extra 5% discount,
okay,
I'd lose it. So I thought, I ain't doing that again. But the machine I could go with was the Messer Griesheim,
which was the EWM.
So that's what I used to go with. And boy, what I had back then, when you were selling up against Arctech from Planet Welding, there was the ESABs, there was Ehrlichens, Hobart.
And it was still stuff with a brand, and it all had brand standing. The issue that you would have had, the biggest issue, I'm kind of thinking before the price came into it was, who's Messer?
What's this? Exactly.
Who's Messer?
Exactly.
Not knowing that it was an EWM machine, because if he'd have gone in and said EWM, I still get that now. Yeah. Not as much as I did 10 years ago.
But the great thing was, that at that time, the Messer Griesheim company, was a fantastic company to work with. The backup you got at that time, there was the area guy, Mike Courtney, the technical backup, a guy called Alan Hall. I don't know if you know Alan.
No.
Great. Any issues with machines, anything you needed to know, you ring Alan, he'd be there, he'd give you all the support you needed and everything else. Mike was good on his machines. Their plasmas were pretty good as well. The Mesa Greasearm plasmas were good.
I don't think they were EWM.
They were very good.
I don't know much about the plasma because EWM now, and as long as I've known them, don't do their own plasmas. And
we did well. Yeah, there's the demonstrator. Oh God, Shelley we used to call him. I can't remember his proper name. We just used to call him Shelley. There was a lad called John Fish. He was a good demonstrator. But there were times I needed to do with demos myself, which I didn't mind. I'm a welder, I didn't mind doing my own demos.
It's great pulling the trigger.
But when you got a chance to do a demo and show the customer what it could do, you got the sale.
Easily.
Of course, in Humberside at that time also, there were companies like Yorkshire Marine Containers in Beverley, who was a direct account of Mesa. They had all Mesa MIG machines, and they had their oxy fuel machines. It was all Mesa. The keyhole plasma, what they had, that was Mesa. Thermodynamics torch, found out.
Yeah,
but anyway,
Yeah.
And it was brilliant. It was brilliant. Struthers and Carter, they had the Mesa oxyfuel as well. So I was able, because I worked with Mesa and they could see how I was trying to promote their product. They let me have the spares business in Yorkshire Marine and in Struthers. So it was great. It was great for me. It was a good company. The guys I just mentioned there, Mike Courtney and Alan Hall, because that time Mesa were the sort of like the outlet for Polysude.
Yeah.
So any Polysude inquiries, any orbital and everything.
Are you aware of the tie-up there in Polysude and EWM?
I don't know. No.
Have you ever taken a Polysude power source apart?
No. Right. Okay.
Polysude is a company. That's great. But I know that I'd taken a 400 amp version apart and it was an EWM machine inside, bare bones.
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
But I was amazed to find out, as an engineer, and the machine was brand new and the engineer was in from Polysude and I was like right over his shoulder, like my toolbox. Yeah. And he kind of gave me this dirty look. How are you doing? You want a cup of tea? Let me have a quick look over there. EWM machine in bare bones.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, people that do very similar things. Are you familiar with Weld Logic welding lathes from America, the USA?
No.
Right. FTL had a couple. Strip their power sources down. Miller.
Yeah.
It's a Miller power source in there.
Yeah.
But I think Polysude probably do, some really tricky engineering and processing.
Yeah.
But they want a really good super.
Of course.
Really,
of course.
I'm sure it was, just like I was amazed when I saw it. I thought, looks very EWM in there, does it?
But no, I just couldn't help reminiscing. When I was listening to Callum, and then you were both talking about the EWM, machines and everything else, I couldn't help thinking, well, hey, I can remember the Mesa Greasearm days.
And I think
it was good.
It's good. I think we're gonna have to wrap it up, and we're gonna have to get you back in to do another one. We've already gone over an hour.
We've only just started,
which is why we're gonna have to get you back in.
It's been great. I've enjoyed it, Barry.
But I think I want to kind of wrap up on something that I learned not from anybody at FRONIUS or EWM, but my good friend David Peake, who I will class as. Yeah, again, as I've spoke about Brian, Dave is somebody who brings an instant smile to my face as a person. As a human, I think he's very special, but we're sat talking and it was in a room of everybody. It wasn't just me. It wasn't a direct conversation. And he was talking about, everybody needs to be open-minded because as you can probably imagine, you go to these training centres and you go to these training days and there's somebody there who has got Kempi through them to the bone.
Yes.
And there's somebody there like myself who's got EWM. Now, I know where other products fit into the marketplace extremely well, but some people aren't that, some people are super focused. I'm only going to sell Kempi or whatever, or some other brand.
Yeah.
And Dave said, ultimately that, he knows that there's one plasma company that on the automation, high definition, mixed gas process is really good on mild steel and probably untouchable. And there's a company that's got a slight edge over that company when it comes to stainless. And that pushes each company's ambition to better themselves. Okay? And I'm saying this because in the welding side of things, I can say as an engineer that there's some welding machines and processes that are ridiculously good, and I would say absolutely unbeatable on stainless and mild steel. But then there's one company that really comes to the top of the tree, I personally think, through experience, that takes the edge when it comes to MIG-MAG aluminium. Would you agree with that?
I would totally agree with that. Yes.
Yeah.
There's a company that comes to my mind as well.
Why do you think, before we wrap things up, and what we'll do is when you come back, we'll pick up on this and then get into more about Dad. Because I think it would be good to have you back on. Like Callum, I want Callum back on. There's so much to talk about. Why do you think? Was it a natural thing? Was it something that just happened and they realised that they had a slight edge? Was it an accident, or is it purpose? Is it something that's built in that makes them have that edge over aluminium?
Yeah, I think there's a purpose with that. There's a purpose with it.
It's gold standard.
Yes, and it had to be because there's a number of. There's over the years there's been a number of development projects that FRONIUS have been involved with, and in particular the Volkswagen Group. So when you're looking at cars like the R8 and
that'd be the Audi R8, wouldn't it?
Yeah, where there were certain components they needed a solution for. They wanted it to be aluminium, but they needed a welding solution for it. So
did you design a welding solution for that?
And I would say yes, but also, the R&D, I couldn't really accurately comment because I do feel processes such as PMC, CMT is famous. The cold metal transfer, it's famous, and I've just got some business at a automotive manufacturer because it's the CMT that's sold the process.
Right.
But you've got the likes of the PMC now, Then you've got Ripple. We've got Ripple Drive. We've got
what's a Ripple Drive?
Ripple Drive. So it's exactly what it is. It's a pulse program that gives you the
ripple
effect.
Of TIG.
Because we've just been challenged by a company. They wanted to do. We've got a challenge here. We've got a certain component here, and the client is insisting that we do a TIG route, and it's got to be TIG route on a robot. I'm saying, well, I've got to be honest with you. Our I don't know anywhere that's. I think I might know one company who's doing robotic welding with TIG on aluminium, and they're struggling. But we've always managed to be able to solve this issue with TPSI.
Yes.
Either with CMT or PMC.
PMC.
Right, okay. Can I have a sample so we can do one? Which they did, and we've done it.
So then did they turn around to you then at that point and say, can you make it look more like TIG?
They didn't, but because this company was giving us examples. I said, well, what about bicycle frames and everything else? Surely they're now automating with TIG. I said, no,
they're not.
They're automating with TPSI.
Right.
And I'm showing them. There's numerous videos on YouTube. Yeah. It's not exclusive to FRONIUS with the TPSI, where the aluminium bicycle frames have been welded with TPSI, and it looks like a TIG. Mm-hmm. Scaffolding, aluminium scaffolding. There's a number of companies we've supplied to. And
I'll just clarify that FRONIUS aren't the only people that can MIG mag weld aluminium. Absolutely not.
Exactly. Exactly.
They do seem to. I'm removing all ego from this conversation, because that is another thing I wanted to do, is get rid of any ego. When we did this podcast, is FRONIUS do seem to have the edge. And I'll be honest with you, like, I have absolutely ripped a TPSI apart to try and find out why.
Yeah.
And there's some magic sauce in it somewhere. And there is. And
that's probably the secret of R&D. I mean, the thing is, oh man, I'll just finish off quickly because I could talk forever. But I remember when I got the job as director, at that time, the area manager for that our part of Europe for FRONIUS and responsible for the UK was Peter FRONIUS.
Right, okay.
The grandson, So Peter invited me, and along with the sales director from Spain, Isaac, he invited us both to Austria so we could meet each other, because he wanted me to meet Isaac, and because he thought Isaac could help me, and everything else, which he did. It was brilliant. So while we visited, he took us to R&D, the R&D centre. But we didn't get the standard tour because we were with Peter. We were going into, he was opening doors, and we were walking into departments, and these guys were looking, looking at me and Isaac. Who the hell are these? And they'd see Peter. Oh, it's all right.
Okay.
Who's let them in, sort of thing, And me, and I'm not going to say, but Isaac and myself saw things there, which all I can say is it gives me a lot of confidence that we're on the, we are on the right track. We're good at developing things, and I know the reasons why now.
Great.
The FRONIUS throw a lot of resource at that, and they're not scared to spend money on that. Good. And that's why they come up with what they do. And I know I've been to many companies, and I enjoy it here. It's been great, and I'll continue. While they'll have me, I know I'm getting to the twilight of my career now. So before I come and work for you, Barry, I'll see my time out here.
Gary Waterman's got his application in as well for his retirement days. Yeah, good old Gary. Be lost without him.
Gary's a good ex-Metro guy. Good guy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap it up, buddy. But thanks for coming on. I want to get you back in. I think 6 or 8 weeks time to just pick up where we've gone.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Barry. I really appreciate it.
I've loved it. It's been ace, and to talk about, again, the reason why I started it is all about Dad. It's not, if we get extra, we're giving. I want to give everybody a voice, because Dad gave so many people.
He did
so much time on that phone that I, being on my own now, I can't do. But by giving my time in my business time as well to people like yourself and other people that I genuinely want to come in and have a really good chat about, who's got so much to say about the industry from their perspective, but also incorporate communication in about my dad as well. I think that's ultimately the whole premise. Let's keep him alive.
Okay, thank you.
All right, buddy.
This is the Weld Like Bazza podcast. The Weld Like Bazza podcast is sponsored by MS Welding, the #1 welding solution provider. mswelding.co.uk.